Welcome to a Monday morning edition of The Sweat. We're doing this show from home because we're a Boston-based company and the Bruins lost to the Panthers last night and are eliminated from the playoffs. So we're just going to avoid downtown at all costs. I'm Jesse Cofield. Here's what we have coming up. So later in the show, we're going to talk about another Game 7 in the NHL going down tonight between the Rangers and the Devils. Mike Mutnansky is going to give us a rundown of what he's keeping an eye on this week. We got more to talk about with the NBA playoffs, and the PGA Tour heads to Charlotte. But we start with DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich. Fellas, obviously, we are here to talk about the NFL draft. So who had the best draft this weekend, Jeff? If you had to give out grades here, Steelers did a lot, Eagles did a lot. What do we think?
Those are certainly two teams that really stand out. I mean, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers pretty much knocked it right out of the park, getting just a great OT in Broderick Jones, and then grabbing Joey Porter as well, like early on. But Darnell Washington towards the back half of their draft just looks like a great tight end prospect. I mean, like everyone's going to talk about the Eagles. I'm going to talk about the Eagles as well. What the Eagles did, just letting the draft fall to them, getting Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, guys who can just replace what they already have in place in an elite defensive line. It's pretty incredible to think, but they got some athletes in the back end of the draft too. I like the Sidney Brown pick. So Eagles absolutely had it. And then I'm going to give a little shout out to the Giants. The Giants are building a really interesting team. I really like their first round pick in Deontay Banks. I like the wide receiver they picked up in Jalen Hyatt. They got good valuation on him. I think those are three teams that really did well. I think the biggest thing of the draft, Jesse, is that the good teams continue to draft well. Like I think the Bengals had a good draft, and the kind of mediocre fringe teams continue to draft poorly. I think it just shows why these good teams continue to be good teams. If you draft well, you're going to continue to be good for the most part.
Yeah, we'll get to teams that are in the running for the worst draft grade next. Pierce, what do you think? You want to echo those sentiments? Anybody else that stands out to you?
Yeah, the Eagles definitely had a great draft. I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb and suggest that the Colts really made a splash. I'm not a big Anthony Richardson guy, but a lot of experts really think that this guy can be an elite quarterback in this league. It might take some time. Definitely, it's probably going to be better than the quarterbacks the Colts have had over the recent seasons. So that's an immediate upgrade. And then, later on, second round, they add a defensive back in Julius Brents. May not be the best cornerback in the draft, but to get a second round corner, this is a passing league. You want to get quarterbacks and cornerbacks, and that was definitely a need they needed to address. And then in the third round, Josh Downs falls to them. So again, a shifty slot receiver. He's going to play next to Pittman and Pierce. So Richardson's going to have some decent receivers to throw to. Oh, by the way, they still have Jonathan Taylor. This offense wasn't that far away. And the only thing really holding them back was just really terrible quarterback play. And I really think Richardson's going to be an upgrade over Sam Ehlinger. So that's good for them. And then they added a tackle in the fourth round. It's a little risky. It's bold, but I am intrigued by what the Colts did.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Ballard sticking his guns there. Richardson, definitely the highest ceiling quarterback, big arm, so athletic. So we'll see how that one plays out. Pierce, Jeff alluded to it. The rich get richer, and the other teams just definitely not doing as much in the draft as they should have. What do you think? Who gets the worst draft grade?
It's the Falcons. It's the Falcons for me. And it's just one mistake overall, which I just can't understand. Why are you drafting running backs in the first round? You absolutely have no business drafting a running back in the top 10, regardless of what your team is and what your needs are. To take the running back in the top 10, it blows my mind, especially considering they didn't need a running back. They had a running back in Algier who rushed for 1,000 yards, and they had a change of pace back in CPAT. Why do you add a third running back? Well, it's because it's Arthur Smith, and he thinks it's the 90s still, and all he wants to do is run the ball. He thinks he still has Derrick Henry. They didn't really need anybody at wide receiver. They didn't really need any tight ends. Their line's playing well, but they could have definitely improved on the defensive end. They definitely could have tried to trade back or maybe address quarterback. I'm not completely sold by Desmond Ridder. Maybe they saw something that I didn't see at the end of last season, but I think they still have the need at quarterback. Going running back, it just boggles the mind, and that just ruins the entire draft for me from the Falcons' perspective.
Jeff, what do you think? I mean, somebody that had a lot of the people scratching their heads was the Patriots. I mean, they hit Gonzalez out of the park after he dropped to them. Keon White also a good choice there, but then it was just kind of like, what's going on? We got a kicker, we got a punter. What do you think?
I mean, it's just Bill Belichick just selecting who he wants. So I mean, like I'm not even surprised by the Patriots drafts at this point. It was a great start for them by getting Gonzalez. That kind of almost just saves it. I mean, you may just be getting the steal of the draft there at 17. I could not believe he fell that far, but I think that the Gonzalez pick actually speaks to, I'm going to speak to the other team that took an RB early, the Detroit Lions. To quote Billy Madison, you blew it. Like, what are you doing? You made an insanely good trade back. You traded back to 12. You let the draft come to you. You had Gonzalez there. The Detroit Lions were bottom 10 in DVOA and run defense and pass defense, and they took a running back in the first round. And then they took a linebacker. These are positions they had already addressed with a second round pick with DeAndre Swift by signing David Montgomery. They signed a linebacker in free agency as well. These are the least valuable, like just positions in terms of positional, just what they add to your team essentially. So positional value. And the Lions just ignored this. The Lions are in a great spot this year. They're in a weaker division. They have a great roster. They have a top 5 offense. They absolutely need to build out their interior line and their cornerback. And they had a chance to do it, and they didn't do it. And it's disappointing from someone who's been observing this. You got Dan Campbell. I'm honestly, I'm so out on the Lions at this point. It's insane. They blew value there. And then they had to trade DeAndre Swift for a 4th rounder after taking him in the 2nd round. DeAndre Swift averaged 5.5 yards per carry last year. He's one of the best receiving running backs in the NFL. You did not need to upgrade the running back position. I don't care. I don't care how good Jahmyr Gibbs is. You did not need to do that. I'm going to give shout outs to the Texans, who also just blew up their trade value with that trade up and then didn't address some of their needs, and the Cardinals as well. Okay pick. With Paris Johnson. The rest of the draft didn't really address their needs. So again, the bad teams continued to draft bad, and it's probably going to cost them next year as well.
Jeff, what do you think about a player that ended up dropping down the board that a team maybe got a lot of good value on? You mentioned obviously the Gonzalez pick with the Patriots, but then also Will Levis dropping down to the Titans. That was pretty good for them. They're trying to move on from Ryan Tannehill and Malik Willis.
Yeah, I mean the Titans. It's not bad to pick up Levis. I don't really know. I'm not going to pretend to know Will Levis's upside. All the people who were screaming that Zach Wilson was, the next coming of Aaron Rodgers are now telling me that Will Levis is terrible. So I don't really know what to think there. But it was a fine pick. I mean, I think that the Titans certainly did well to ignore the hype and then pick up Will Levis in the 2nd round instead of grabbing him at 11 or something like that. So I mean, just from there, I think getting a good value pick there. I'm going to go out. This is just my personal preference. My kind of favorite player that went towards the back of the 1st round. I think Quentin Johnston is going to end up being the best wide receiver from this class. And regardless of if I'm right or not, I just love the fact that the Chargers picked him up. The Chargers have 2 aging wide receivers, guys who have not been able to stay on the field in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And you have one of the best big arm quarterbacks in the league who's just a fantastic outside the pocket, can make all the throws in Justin Herbert. Quentin Johnson is exactly what the Chargers needed. A big guy who can just beat people up physically, beat people downfield with 4.4 speed. I love the fit there. And I love that they went out and got him. I don't care that, people said, oh, maybe he was like the 4th best wide receiver. Some people had him as the best wide receiver. So the fact he was still there when the Chargers got him, they got him at the top of the wide receiver run. You saw Zay Flowers, Addison go right after him. The Chargers knew what they had, and they got the guy they wanted. I love that pick for the Chargers. So I don't know if you could say Quentin Johnson was a follower or good value, but I really like the pick for the Chargers there.
Pierce, what do you think? Which player dropped and a team just got a lot of value snapping him up?
It's the guy we already mentioned, Christian Gonzalez. This might be a tough day for Boston, but they can forget about hockey and just remember that they got an absolute steal in Christian Gonzalez. I was more of a Devin Witherspoon guy to start out, but I got talked into Gonzalez. I'm happy that Witherspoon ended up at Seattle, but a lot of people were really high on him. And it's just the way that the drafting order fell in, that some people just didn't necessarily need a cornerback, and he dropped to them. And he could absolutely transform this defense. We look at the Patriots and all the Super Bowls that they won, and yeah, Tom Brady deserves a lot of credit for those teams. But on every one of those teams, you had a shutdown cornerback that was absolutely leading the defense. And Gilmore, Asante Samuel, you want to go all the way back to Ty Law. They might have the guy that's going to lead this defense for the next 10 years. And as we've mentioned before, this is a passing league. You've got to have a quarterback and you need edge rushers or cornerbacks, this is someone they can build around, solidify the defense, squeeze out some wins. I think New England needs to be absolutely excited to get Gonzalez in this spot.
All right, Pierce, who do you think was the biggest reach of the draft?
It's the guys that we already mentioned. It's the running backs in the front end. It's Gibbs and Robinson. Neither of those teams necessarily needed a running back. And really, no one ever needs to draft a running back this high in the modern NFL. Maybe, in the 90s, you could pull this off. And maybe if there's a generational talent in the draft, then yeah, you go after that running back regardless of need. But these guys are not necessarily generational talents. They're not that great. And even if they are, this is a league that still passes the ball a lot. And I just don't understand spending that kind of draft capital on a running back. They could have gotten these guys in the back end. They could have both traded down and still got both of these running backs. No one was rushing to pick up a running back. So Atlanta and Detroit, and Jeff already just pretty much buried Detroit, but they deserve it. They blew it. They reached, and they were bad reaches.
Yeah, Jeff, do you agree here? I mean, obviously it's a wide receivers game these days. So kind of crazy to be reaching up for those running backs in the first round here.
Again, we'll talk about it quickly, but the biggest thing with those running back picks is these teams already had running backs in place. I give a little bit of just a pass to the Falcons because they have a run first offense.
No pass.
I'm not going to give them a full pass, just a tiny pass, Pierce. Bijan Robinson was labeled as a generational talent. Their run first offense, at least it fits with their scheme, I guess. It's still not a smart pick, but I'm going to talk about a couple other guys that went in the top 10. I really didn't like the pick. The Cardinals picked an O lineman at 6. There's a ton of great O linemen. The Bears got a great one, a great OT in Darnell Wright at 10. You could have traded back here if you're the Cardinals. You have so many needs. You could have gotten Gonzalez and another O lineman. The Cardinals did not manage their assets well, and I really don't like the pick for the Raiders. Tyree Wilson has a long medical history already. That's why he dropped out from 3. The Texans were all over him, and then he dropped. I think the Raiders kind of got sucked in here. They could have traded back with the Eagles. They could have just taken Jalen Carter, who may be the best player in this draft. I really don't like the picks for Arizona or the Raiders there. Again, 2 teams who would have been great to pick up Christian Gonzalez, and they could have done that if they had managed their assets a little bit better. So shout out to the Cardinals and the Raiders for making what I would say not great picks either.
All right, good stuff, guys. That's all the time we have for football. We're going to take a quick break here, and then coming up next, we will talk another Game 7 showdown going down in the NHL between the Rangers and Devils. It will end poorly for one team like it ended for the Bruins last night.
Go Panthers.
Welcome back to this Monday morning edition of The Sweat. I'm here with RotoWire's Paul Bruno and NHL.com's Anna Dua. All right, guys. Panthers, they completed the comeback. Bruins fall in 7. Dun, dun, dun. And the President's Trophy curse continues. Paul, what are your takeaways from this one? It was especially brutal the way they gave it up in the last minute there.
Well, it's just a reminder how the first round of the NHL playoffs are the best part of any postseason tournament across the landscape of pro sports. There's always upsets, and I don't know anybody who's going to claim to have gone 8-0 in their series prediction. Upsets galore in terms, including the 2 finalists from last year and this year's record-breaking Boston Bruin regular season team that ripped up all the record books, but they came up a little bit short when it mattered the most. And for once, they were on the wrong end of a 3-1 series collapse.
Yeah, Anna, you hate to see it, or maybe you love to see it. I don't know.
I mean, it was a pretty crazy game all throughout. I guess the worst thing that could happen if you win the President's Trophy is having to face Sergei Bobrovsky in the first round, because, man, he swept Tampa Bay back in 2019 when he was on the Columbus Blue Jackets and now eliminates the Boston Bruins after their historic season. But Brandon Montour, after Game 5 in the locker room, I could feel like a little bit of shift in momentum in Florida. He said, we're going to be back here for Game 7, and he was the difference maker in that Game 7. So it's a scary team. I'm a bit worried for the Leafs in the second round. I think it's a more favorable matchup for them than Boston for sure, but you can never count out the Florida Panthers.
All right, Anna, what about another division winner falling last night? Colorado not going to be defending their cup. What stood out in this Game 7, and how cool is it, I mean, to have the Kraken moving on?
I think it's very cool. I think this is a team that has been underrated throughout the entire season. They had some great players who had great performances. Oliver Bjorkstrand was a player I was looking at before the playoffs started because he was a critical part of that Columbus Blue Jackets team that swept the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019. And all of a sudden, he showed up big time in Game 7, had 2 goals, hit the post and crossbar like 3 times. So he could have had 5 goals in that matchup. But wow, Seattle, they really made a statement for themselves. They finished the regular season top 5 in the NHL in goals per game. So it's a team that's been kind of flying underneath the radar with how deep they are. But that was a big, big statement. I think that was probably the biggest upset in this first round.
Paul, the Kraken became the first expansion team to defeat the reigning Stanley Cup champs in their inaugural playoff series. That's crazy.
Absolutely. And I agree with Anna's take pretty much right down the line. Look, at Seattle bottled up the depth part of Colorado's offense and counterpunched the Avs to death in this series. That was their tactic. They played sound defense and waited for Colorado to make some mistakes, and they pounced on them. Pressure of must-win games got to the champs against this expansion outfit from Seattle, backed by the former Avs goalie Philip Grubauer, who has had to be super motivated and knew his opposing skaters very well. Can you imagine how many times he faced these guys in practice over the years? And let's not make any mistake here. Shooters have tendencies and goalies get a book on them. I mean, the same is true the other way around, but I see that Grubauer went to school on all these guys when he was with them, and he pretty much knew what they would be up to. And a big part of that also is in the shootouts. We also see the tendencies of shooters there. They don't have a wide variety of moves when it comes down to it. So Grubauer was, to me, the central figure in Seattle's dramatic upset. There's no question in my mind.
All right, Paul, Game 7 tonight, Rangers at the Devils. Who's the captain's pick for the showdown contest here?
Well, on a small slate like this, you got to get the winning goalie. And I think at home, Akira Schmidt is got to be the favorite. And I also see a low scoring outcome. I don't see a big high scoring game. So that's another reason why you got to get the goalie right here. The $10,600 price tag shouldn't scare you, because if he wins the game, he should have the highest game score of any player on the ice tonight.
All right, Anna, what's the play here? Who's your captain pick?
I like Paul's take on the goalies, but I'll give you a skater in this one. And I think if I'm going with a skater, I'm going to have to choose Chris Kreider, because I actually disagree. I think both offenses are going to be out guns a-blazing in this one, trying to seal the deal. The Rangers want to win this year. They loaded up at the trade deadline. This wasn't a plan for the future. The New Jersey Devils are still a bit of a younger team, but they're very, very hungry to prove all their doubters wrong from the regular season. So I think the offenses are going to be on fire tonight. Chris Kreider Kreider has 9 points this series in 6 games, 6 goals. I mean, he's been a factor in every single Ranger win that we've seen so far. And I know that the Rangers want to get it done probably just a little bit more than the Devils. I mean, everyone wants to get it done at this time of year, but they're really loaded up for a big run this year. And it would be a huge disappointment for them to go out in round 1.
Anna, who else needs to be in the DFS lineup tonight?
So I think on the Rangers end of the ice, there's a lot of players you can look at right now just to load up on that team, because I think they're going to really, really, really want it. But on the Devils, I'll give them a little bit of love too. If you look deeper down the lineup, Dawson Mercer has been a player I've been super high on, and he's finally found his own in this postseason, getting on the board a couple of times and showing up for the New Jersey Devils. All eyes are going to be on Jack Hughes, but there is some value deeper in that team, and Dawson Mercer would be a player that I would absolutely have in my lineup.
All right, Paul, who's another dude you just need in your DFS lineup?
Well, just like Anna, I think you got to load up on the team that you believe in. And I'm sticking with the Devils. I called them in 7 to start this series. And so for me, it's the home club tonight. And that will have to include the entire first line. Look at the prices on some of these guys, pretty attractive too. Nico Hischier, $8,200. Jesper Bratt, $7,400. I agree with Anna that I think the Rangers are going to key on Jack Hughes, but that leaves some pretty talented players like Hischier and Bratt ready to make a difference tonight. And I think that will be where the game-winning goal will come from, that scoring unit.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you. Appreciate you talking puck with us. Coming up next, Mike Mutnansky is going to join the show. And we know how Giannis feels about being eliminated in the first round, but does Mutt think that the Bruins need to call this season a failure? I don't know. I'm going to ask him next. Welcome back to The Sweat. I'm Jesse Cofield, and I have Mike Mutnansky joining me now. Mutt, we are just going through your Monday stack. So we're going to get your thoughts on the weekend and what's going down heading into the week ahead. So listen, we know how Giannis feels about the top seed losing in the first round here, but you kind of have to chalk this Bruins season up as a failure, right? I mean, an epic collapse.
Yeah, good morning, Jesse. This was tough for both players and the coach's side. I heard you talk about it earlier. Feels like kind of a down day in the city of Boston. Let's start with the players, though. And it's a collapse. It's a failure. It's both of those. The players had a chance up 3-1 against Florida to close this thing out. Multiple opportunities in 3 consecutive games. And defensively, Jesse, this thing fell apart. The Bruins are the best defensive team in the NHL this year, allowing just over 2 goals per game. In the playoffs in this series, almost 4 goals a game, a goal and a half more in the postseason. So from a player's standpoint, turnovers, missed opportunities, there were chances. The coach takes some blame too. He had a chance to go back to his backup goaltender, his co-goaltender in Jeremy Swayman in games 5 and 6, didn't do it, goes to him in game 7, says, hey kid, go win us the series in game 7. I hated the call by the coach. He deserves some blame, but ultimately the failure is on the players first, coach second. What a brutal first round exit, Jesse.
Yeah, like I said, that's why we're doing the show from home today. We just didn't even want to go downtown. Did not want to risk it. What's a topic in the stack for MLB? Anything like stand out this weekend? Something you're looking forward to this week?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching this weekend thinking of our pal Emerson and how much he must have loved all those home runs in Mexico City for that high scoring game. And my only point is, like, maybe you don't play an all-star game there. You don't do a home run derby, but Johnny Gomes does like this home run tour. Get the home run tour of Mexico City. That was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of fun if you were on the over in that game on the DK Sportsbook. But bigger picture, this is a huge week for Tampa. You know, in Boston, we've watched this Tampa Bay team. Chaim Bloom leaves there, comes to Boston. Things don't go well. But for the Rays, they are unbelievable, Jesse. And the question becomes like, is this the bad teams they face? They face a bad Chicago team this weekend, Oakland, Detroit. Now they get the Pirates. Two different 20-win teams before May 1st meeting here this week. Only 8 teams have done that in baseball history. 5 of the 8 teams that have won 20 or more games before May 1st have won 100 games. So the numbers say the Pirates or Rays are winning 100. They face off this week. This should be a fun week for both teams.
All right, Mutt, tons of NBA drama going on this weekend too. Nuggets take control of game 1. Heat get the road win in MSG. Warriors move on in game 7. Celtics Sixers tip off tonight. What is the biggest NBA story right now? And what does it have to do with Jon Rahm?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you Celtics Sixers was the biggest story because I think Embiid is hurt. And I think if he is banged up, the Sixers have very little shot to win this series. So Celtics should advance. But you're watching Golden State last night. And when you watch golf on weekends, Jon Rahm is coming. Jon Rahm is inevitable. That's Steph Curry. Like it was just a matter of time before they blew through that series. I know it took them longer than people expected, but his performance there in that second half was just like Jon Rahm. Like it was, how many is he going to score? It's 40, it's 45. Now it's 50. And he was doing it in a ridiculous style. And I just feel like we counted out Golden State way too soon. They were the 3rd or 4th choice at some point to get to the NBA finals out of the Western Conference. I thought it'd be Celtics and Warriors. That thing is alive, but boy, watching Steph do his thing in the 4th quarter last night was pretty miraculous.
All right, how about any takeaways from the NFL draft? We were talking earlier about what a steal Gonzalez ended up being for the Pats.
Yeah, you guys had a great conversation about the draft, and the guys had a great point about running backs. Like, I don't know what year I'm living in to see Robinson and Gibbs, and I like they're good players, obviously. They'll go on to have good careers, but 2 guys in the top 12 at running back in 2023, I was shocked to see it. The Patriots thing is weird. I just so we had this down. So they take the play the Gonzalez early. They get a good 2nd round pick in White, Jesse. And then Bill Belichick goes safety, center, guard, another center. So he's loading up on offensive linemen for a team that is desperate for offensive talent. And the guys referenced these 2 teams drafting running backs being in the 90s. I still feel like Bill Belichick wants to go running game defense up against these offenses. So frustrating draft if you're looking for offensive talent like I was. The weapons for the Patriots didn't appear to get them offensively here in this draft.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing here. And it, because of Belichick's greatness, I feel like we're all like, he's big braining us. There's like something coming, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it.
It's weird, Jesse. The big brain seemed a lot bigger when Tom Brady was here, right?
Yeah.
It felt like a lot bigger brain for Bill Belichick. I just want offense. Like I see Steph Diggs in Buffalo, Aaron Rodgers now with the Jets. Miami's loaded. The Patriots are playing like this defensive stuff. It's a lot of pressure on Bill O'Brien, the new coordinator, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mike Gesicki. You're asking a lot of these guys to come in. And Mac Jones, you're asking a lot of here in year 3, trying to step forward as a quarterback.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if it was a big brain move or we don't know. All right. As a reminder to everybody watching, DK Horse is live. So Mutt, we're gonna get your thoughts on the Derby on Friday, but like any early thoughts as we head into the start of the Triple Crown on DK Horse?
Yeah, we have a lot of work ahead of us this week. Muttstack.com is the website. Check it out for all our Derby doings, some podcasts and picks. It's still early, Jesse. Like there's no market yet. There are some odds that the horses are going to be, but they're going to draw this afternoon, which means decide what part of this post position they'll start in. That'll be at 2:00 today. The odds will be released. Betting starts later on this week. So to give you a pick right now is tough to do. I'll give you a horse going to be 25-30 to 1. That'll be in my plays. The horse's name is Disarm. People are going to look at Disarm, his last race in Lexington Stakes, and see he ran 3rd. He was just trying to run 3rd to get the points to run here. He has looked awesome on track at Churchill Downs, according to the people that I talked to there in Louisville. He's going to be a huge price. And so we'll have a better idea of what the field looks like in the next couple of hours. But I'll give you an early week price horse in the Derby. Disarm to hit the board, finish 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, maybe 4th in the Superfecta. He'll be a monster price on Saturday.
All right, awesome stuff, Mutt. Thank you so much. Can't wait to talk to you later in the week more about this. And everybody make sure you check out muttstack.com. All right, we will be right back. We are talking hoops with Nick Whalen. back to the sweat. It is NBA shoot around time. We're getting the best plays for the NBA playoff slate going down this evening with RotoWire's Nick Whalen. So Nick, first, what's the biggest takeaway from you from this past weekend?
Well, I think we have several that we need to get to. And, first and foremost, it's the Golden State Warriors going on the road to win a Game 7. And, I think the number one narrative that's spelled Golden State this season as they try to defend their title is, when can this team find a way to win on the road? And we basically went the entire regular season without the Warriors answering that question. They end up winning 2 on the road at Sacramento in this series, taking it in 7 games. And this to me felt like kind of a reminder, Jesse, that you never want to bet against a team like the Warriors, the team that has all the experience versus the team that has not been in the playoffs in a decade and a half in that situation. I think Sacramento deserves a ton of credit for the season that they've had. But you just kind of felt it like early in the third quarter when the Warriors started to pull away. It just felt like the Kings ran out of gas and that home crowd was not really enough to push them. So now we're set up for a fantastic Warriors-Lakers round 2 narrative fest in that series. And of course, elsewhere, we saw the Phoenix Suns get blown out in their Game 1. Pretty jarring to see a Kevin Durant team get blitzed like that, even on the road in the Game 1. I think they'll bounce back tonight. And then, of course, we saw the New York Knicks without Julius Randle build a nice lead, looked like they were cruising. Finally, the Heat have an off shooting night. And then that second half comes around and Miami able to take control of that series. So I think we have kind of a dream second round set up for the league, Jesse, in terms of star power and big time teams participating.
All right, let's take a look at the DFS slate for this evening. 2 games to choose from. What is the best overall DFS play tonight? Jokic is going to be your most expensive dude at 10-8. Very expensive.
Yeah, I don't mind going Jokic. Like you said, at 10-8, I mean, we're talking that, that's $1,300 more than someone like Kevin Durant. Now, KD doesn't necessarily have that like insane Jokic upside where he could give you a 38, 15, and 11 type of game. So I understand if you want to lean Jokic. I on a 2-game slate like this would prefer to stay away from Jokic. I'm fine with KD at 9,500. He's one of those guys where, Game 1, Phoenix loses by 20. It gets out of hand in the fourth quarter. Some guys didn't really play their full workload. KD still puts up a casual 29 and 14 with 3 blocks. So you don't really worry about game script when it comes to Kevin Durant. In terms of other relatively high priced options, I like Jamal Murray tonight at 8,000. We've seen him go off 3 or 4 times now in the playoffs. And frankly, I don't know that the price has fully reflected that. He's got back-to-back 50-plus DraftKings point games. He went over 50 in 3 of the last 5 overall. So I think at 8,000, you're still getting a pretty decent deal there.
All right, how about we go even more value? What's your favorite value play on the board?
B-ball Paul Reed at 5,300 is going to be very, very popular. If Joel Embiid ends up sitting out this game, that of course is the expectation. It's reflected in the line. The Celtics are 10-point favorites. So, if you think you're getting a great value there, you are, but you got to remember that a lot of people in your contest are going to be thinking the same thing. If you want to zag a little bit, I really like Al Horford at 5,200. I know there's maybe some concern that without Embiid, he doesn't hit that minutes total that we're used to, but I'll put it this way. He has 13 total points over the last 2 games, but he has 74 DraftKings points over the last 2 games. I mean, it's the rebounds, it's the blocks, steals, assists, the threes. He doesn't have to light up the box score in traditional ways in order to be a productive DFS option. And then not a true value, quote unquote, but Aaron Gordon at 5,800, I think he is going to continue to play a ton of minutes in this series. I mean, this game was decided early in the fourth quarter in Game 1. Gordon still played 39 minutes. They need him to chase around Kevin Durant as long as he's on the floor. So if we get a closer Game 2, I think it could be a 40-plus minute night for Aaron Gordon.
All right, Nick, Philly and Boston kicking off their series this evening with Game 1. Do you have a best bet for this one? You can go Game 1 or you can go a series bet.
Mm-hmm. I'm staying away from the series for now, just because I think there's too much unknown with Joel Embiid. But, if you like Boston to come out and win this game, obviously that series price is going to shift after Game 1. So if you want to bet Boston, do it now. I'm looking at the Sixers, team total tonight, which is at 101.5. And I went back and forth. Traditionally, they've gone over this number in games in which Embiid has not played during the regular season, but a lot of those were against bad teams, second night of back-to-backs, things like that. They went under 100 points twice in the Brooklyn Nets series. And that's a Nets team that's a solid defense, but not a fantastic defense. Noah Joel Embiid, maybe that opens up the offense a little bit, but if it's not a great shooting night for the Sixers, I think they're going to struggle Defensively, I think they could, without Embiid, this could get away from them and could be a situation where it does turn into a blowout. I don't think that bodes well for their late game offense. So I'm going under on Sixers 101.5 points tonight. Also like the over on Al Horford, 6.5 rebounds. You're getting that at plus 100.
All right. Game 2 for the Nuggets and the Suns. We talked about the shock of watching the Suns get blown out in game 1. So what is your bet for this one tonight?
I think Phoenix bounces back. I do. So I would take them with the points tonight. Again, Denver's a very good team. And I think one of the other takeaways from these playoffs so far is that I and a lot of other people probably underrated the Denver Nuggets as a 1 seed. I think they're the team that's been probably the most bulletproof of all the elite teams so far. But if you think Phoenix bounces back tonight, they head back to Arizona with this series even at 1-1. I would bet Phoenix right now at plus 140 to win the series, because again, if they win tonight, that number is probably going to be in the negative territory in favor of the Suns. So if you're a Suns believer, now's the time to jump on that. In terms of this specific game, I'll go over on 28.5 points for Kevin Durant. We mentioned he went over this number in a game 1 that got out of hand. Didn't feel like a good game for him. I think he'll be a lot better tonight. And I think at some point, if the Suns are going to win the finals, Jesse, or even go to the finals, KD needs to be their best player, not Devin Booker. And Booker's been fantastic, obviously, not to take anything away from him, but this has to be Kevin Durant's team if they're going to reach their ceiling.
All right, good stuff, Nick. Appreciate it. One more break, one more block to go here on the Sweat. We are going to recap the Mexico Open and preview the Wells Fargo in Charlotte with Jason Sobel and Jeff Ulrich coming up next. Welcome back to the Sweat. I have DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and the Action Network's Jason Sobel joining me now. We're recapping the Mexico Open to begin here. So, Jason, we have a tweet of yours from the weekend here that says, there were times earlier in his career where Tony Finau leading by 4 going to the final hole wouldn't have felt very comfortable, but this dude, bogey-free round, held off Rahm. I mean, Rahm wasn't exactly making Tony sweat, but it can't be easy being on the back nine, playing with the number 1 player in the world. How impressed were you by that poise by Finau's final round, Jason?
Yeah, good morning, Jesse. And all of a sudden, Tony Finau has sort of turned into a closer. He has 6 career PGA Tour wins, but 5 of those have occurred in the last 20 months, including 2 this season already. And I get it. Now comes the pessimism. Now comes the questions of when is he going to win a big one? And I know we're going to get into that. But look, just like a college football team that can only beat the other team on the other side of the field, you can only win a golf tournament against the other players that are playing in that tournament. Jon Rahm was there. Jon Rahm's the hottest golfer on the planet, the best player on the planet right now. Tony Finau stood toe-to-toe with him throughout the entire weekend, didn't make a bogey on Sunday. Fantastic playing, and trust me, big things are coming for Tony very, very soon.
Jeff, I know you feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, if you're discounting Tony Finau at this point, I think you're just overlooking good opportunity. You know, you look at the odds for the upcoming majors. He's not put in that group with like Cantlay and Xander yet. Yet you look at what he's accomplished over the last 2 years. He absolutely deserves to be in that group, if not ahead of some of those guys potentially. So there's still this pessimism out there. Jason put it perfectly. There's pessimism out there on Tony Finau. Now you don't really understand why. There's only so many major championships to go around. Jon Rahm is obviously scooping some up right now. We had Scheffler go on a run, but Tony Finau will get his opportunity. And at this point, he just deserves to be in that sort of class of player. I mean, you've got to give him some credit for not only staring down John Rahm, but staring down a good player in Brandon Wu, who made like a 50-foot eagle at one point to get really close, didn't rattle Finau in the least. He just dusted the field. It was really impressive.
Yeah, Jeff, you mentioned Wu, so obviously Rahm and Finau was the final grouping. Now, on these tournaments where there are two favorites, is that what you want to see, or would you have rather seen Wu make the run and pull it out?
I mean, I'm always for chaos and for long shot winners, Jesse, you know that. But at the same time, what we're seeing in the PGA right now is that it's basically a two-class system. This is probably the least amount of parity I think we've had on the PGA Tour since I've started covering it, which is actually like we're getting not quite at a decade, but close to it. The top tier is just it's far and head and shoulders apart, and you're seeing it in these weaker field events. The top players don't come and choke and play down to their competition. They dust the field. Finau's done it, 4 times now in these sort of semi-weaker field events. We've seen Rahm do it at the Amex, the Mexico Open last year. Brandon Wu and Badia are great players, but they're just not on that level yet. And we're going to have to see these second-tier players really start to break through on a consistent basis. Outside of Kurt Kitayama at Bay Hill, we really haven't seen that in the Elevate events. So really kind of just, the elite tier right now is as good as it's ever been on the PGA.
Yeah, Jason, do you agree? Not a ton of parity right now between that elite tier and these secondary guys?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Jeff said right there, which is, look, as bettors, we'd all like to get a long shot. We all want that lottery ticket, but I was on Tony Finau last week, and at some point you look at the better players in the field and you say, they have a better chance of winning. This is why we have odds. I mean, this is what we all understand. And of course, I think it's better for the game. Golf is an individual sport. It's a superstar-driven sport. You drive away the masses when you have the Brandon Woos and players like that. I talked to Brandon last week. He's a great guy. No offense to him, but you need those superstars to keep the casual fans, keep the casual bettors interested in watching on a regular basis. So having Finau and Rahm go up against each other on the weekend at the Mexico Open, that was the best possible circumstance they could have had for this past week. So, I'm sure the PGA Tour loves that. I'm sure the folks that run the Mexico Open love it. And I'm sure that some people that may not have otherwise watched because of Finau and Rahm this past week, which that helps everything.
Okay, so Friday morning, Jeff Ulrich tweets out Tony Finau's PGA Championship odds. They were plus 3,500 at the time. So Jason, is it time to maybe talk Jeff off the ledge for another win for Finau against a relatively weaker field, or are you jumping on the bandwagon here? Is it only a matter of time with big things coming?
So I love the theory. I'm just going to change the detail just a little bit because I've had Tony Finau targeted not for the PGA Championship, and I hope he wins the PGA. I don't want Jeff to cash a big ticket on Finau, but I've had him targeted for the U.S. Open instead, coming next month at LACC. I'm wearing the logo right now, but look, we've seen, first of all, Finau contend at Riviera, which is going to be a comparable course to what we're going to see at LACC. Secondly, the U.S. Open is no longer the domain of the little guy. This is not the event where Corey Pavin and Lee Janzen and Jim Furyk could go out there and hit fairways and greens and have a chance of winning. You've got to be, over the last 10 years, a big, strong player who can hack it out of the rough. It's the reason why we've seen the Dustin Johnsons and Brooks Koepkas and Gary Woodlands and Bryson DeChambeau's and even Matt Fitzpatrick, who might not look like a big player in stature, but hits it a long way and has gained a lot of distance over the last few years. Even he fit the profile last year at Brookline. And so I think Tony completely fits that profile of what we're looking for in a U.S. Open player. I don't know. Why don't we split the difference and Jeff and I can both win and he takes the next 2 majors?
Okay, fine. Fair enough. Split the difference there. All right, let's head to Charlotte. Early thoughts on the top of the board, like whose number looks good up there? Jeff, Rory's the favorite and he has won this event 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sportsbooks have finally caught on with these elevated events. If there's one elite player that kind of drops too far in the odds, we're just all going to bet him. So it's pretty tight up there. I will say this, like I like the look of Victor Hovland coming into this event. He blew up, in the back half of the RBC Heritage. It's not that big a concern for me. He certainly was, in contention at the Masters. So again, you saw some fatigue there, but he's taken a few weeks off, which I really like. He was third at Wells Fargo in his first attempt there. He's also got a top 5 at Copperhead, which is just a very, very comparable course. I think Viktor Hovland is a player we've seen through the start of the year is extremely close. He's working hard on his short game. He, week to week, it's an adventure. But, when you look at the profiles of the players who have won at Quail Hollow, Rory McIlroy, Max Homa, these aren't players who got it done with their short game. Immaculate ball striking, and they got hot with their putter. That's the formula for Viktor Hovland too. So the plus 2,000, plus 2,500 range, that's just where I'm drawn to. I don't think there's anybody with necessarily, massive value there or anything, but Hovland's a player I like at the top.
All right, who do you like at the top here, Jason?
This is about to become a very boring segment, Jesse, because it's
Uh-oh.
much better when Jeff and I are totally in disagreement and we start yelling at each other. Instead, I am absolutely on the same page. Viktor Hovland is my favorite play at the top of the board. Everything Jeff said right there. He was third here 2 years ago. The last time they played at Quail Hollow. The tee to green game has been great. The one criticism of Viktor Hovland over the last couple of years has been his wedge play around the greens. Last season, he was 191st out of 193 ranked players in strokes gained around the greens. This year, he's 163rd. That might not sound like much of a climb, but he's actually losing almost a half stroke less around the greens than he did last year. That's a major difference for a guy of that magnitude who the rest of his game is so good. I look at him very much for the same reason I liked Tony Finau last week, that so-called oxymoron positive regression. Tony Finau's performances had been really good. The results weren't quite there. And look at Viktor Hovland, who's had some better results, but hasn't really seriously contended for a title yet this year. I think it's coming. I think it's coming this week, and I think he's going to have a really good one.
All right, Jason, what about like a long shot, a little dark horse you might be looking at here?
Yeah, how far down this board do we want to keep going? I will point out that Ricky Fowler, who's a little shorter than a dark horse right now. There he is at 35-1. Oh man, I'm not happy with the DraftKings traders right now who didn't put him at 45, 50-1. I would have loved that number, but I still really like Ricky. I think it's a Ricky Fowler week at 35-1. I know that probably doesn't answer the question of a long shot there, but I do really like him. A little further down the board, Cam Davis started to play some really good golf. 3 top 20 finishes in his last 4 starts. I believe he's at 130-1. The last time I checked, 150, even better. Again, it's more of a top 10, top 20 play for me, but if you want to take a little sprinkle outright on Cam Davis, I certainly don't mind that.
All right, Jeff, how far down the board are you willing to go?
I mean, I got to yell at Jason here for mentioning Ricky Fowler. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, this is where Ricky picked up his first win, obviously. So it could certainly happen. Like him, I'd want bigger odds. Look, if you're going deep in an elevated event, you need to absolutely just play for the monster upside. I actually really like the Cam Davis call because I think Cam Davis has some of the similar kind of upside that we saw from a guy like Kurt Kitayama. He's big off the tee. If he gets going with his putter, I think theoretically Cam Davis is good enough to compete against the best players in the world. I'm going to mention Gary Woodland here too, at plus 9,000. It's actually funny because we bring up Ricky Fowler at plus 3,500. I mean, Woodland's played well this season too. He's not been as consistent as Fowler, but he's gotten himself in the mix at Riviera. He's got a good track record at Wells Fargo. He should not be more than double the odds of Ricky Fowler in this field. So I think when you're looking back there at the plus 9,000 range, Woodland is one of those players where he's won a major, he's beaten the top players in the world, and his game's coming back. He could theoretically take on the top players this week. I don't love the chances for a long shot winner here. We've seen Max Homa, Rory McIlroy dominate this event, top 20, top 10 players. It's probably going to happen again. But Woodland and Cam Davis, I actually like that call as well. And quick shout out to Cam Champ, plus 25,000 right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook. He played really well last week. We know Cam Champ is a very talented player, and when he gets going, who knows when he's going to win.
All right, what do we think, Jeff? Got to get your pick for winner. Is it going to be Homa or McIlroy?
No, I mean, look, I'll leave Hovland out there for Jason. I'm going to go. Oh, you know what? Well, let's go with Gary Woodland. I'm going to go with a long shot bet here. I think Woodland is due for a win at this point on the PGA Tour. He's been grinding his way back. So let's go with the long shot bet. It's Monday. Let's get the people's eyes open here. And Gary Woodland is going to compete this week and go for that win.
All right, Jason, who you rolling with?
I love that call from Jeff. By the way, in my piece on the Action Network, I've listed Gary Woodland for a first-round leader play. I'm not naive enough to think that anyone who took a few weeks off can't go out and post the best number on Thursday in the opening round. But Gary Woodland played last week. The ball striking numbers were really good. As usual, the putting wasn't great. If he can turn that around a little bit, I do like him for 4 rounds, but I especially like him for a single round play on Thursday. I'm sticking. Look, he let me have Victor Hovland. I mean, this is like, you know, a fantasy football draft where someone lets the number 1 player slide just because they want to be different a little bit. I will then pick up Victor Hovland and I will play him. But 1B for me this week is Ricky Fowler. I'm telling you, a great record at this event. He's been playing some really solid golf. I think this is where it all culminates for Ricky. It's a big week. I just hate the number. Jesse, can't you do something? 45 to 1. Can't you do that
It's
for me?
above my pay grade. It's above my pay grade.
Call Emerson back.
I know nothing.
Emerson.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you so much. That is a show. We will be back in studio tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern for the Tuesday takeover with Jared Carabas. We'll see you then.